Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to stop by the Life Coach Zach podcast. To all the people out there listening, I have Mandy here, a financial money coach, helps people who make good money pay off debt and grow their savings. She saved $250,000 by the age of 26. Mandy, how you doing today?
I am wonderful, thank you.
Awesome. I'm sure everyone is asking how you saved $250,000 by the age of 26. Tell us more, please.
Absolutely. So the first thing was I did graduate school debt free. So I went to school to be a power engineer, and I made it by without having any debt. That was really, really important to me. So I feel like that was the first thing that really helped me because I didn't have kind of that hole to dig out of. So I came out of school debt free. And then after that, once I had my job, so I grew up in a family where my parents didn't have a lot of money. I could tell that they weren't really saving for retirement. So as soon as I got my first big girl job, I was like, well, I really want to save a lot of money because I never want to be in the situation that they're in. So what I did was from each of my paychecks, I'd set money aside. So I really just automated everything. So right away, I had money going to my retirement. Now, I didn't fully understand what I was actually doing for my investments, but I was like, I'm just going to start putting money there and I can change it later, which I'm really glad that I took that strategy. So I had money coming off each paycheck going towards my investments. And then additionally, so my paycheck would be a little bit smaller. And right away, I got used to not quote unquote making as much money because I had that money coming off automatically. And then from there, additionally, once I received my paycheck, I would take quite a bit of that money, put it into savings. And then anytime that I either got, a raise, a bonus, a tax refund, I never spent that money. I always took that money and I treated it as if I didn't receive it. As soon as it hit my checking account, I either transferred it to savings or put it in my investments. So that was a really big thing, was just me deciding ahead of time, like what kind of life that I wanted to live. And then when it came to buying vehicles and different things, I was really strategic how I went about those decisions. There was a vehicle I was looking at, it was a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I was like, well, I can totally afford this. But I did the math on it and I was like, well, all in all, this vehicle is going to end up costing me like 15 grand more than the other one. That's money that I could instead put towards my investments. And so that's what I chose to do there. And as I went along, another big thing was really watching how I was spending. That's a big thing. A lot of people spend about $450 on average a month. That's just like basically like a money leaks. It's just going out of their bank account on a monthly basis from, impulse spending, emotional spending, and then money that they're just not really sure where it's going. So I was a person who was really dialed in, really watching the numbers. I budgeted. And so all in all, that I didn't realize how much that money was adding up until literally years later. But a big thing is kind of set it and forget it, and automating things as much as possible is huge for really, really getting ahead financially.
Amazing. First of all, I want to acknowledge you and commend you on all the incredible habits you've already implemented in your life, and you're continuing to cultivate them through your own intentionality, but also helping everyone else. And the best way to learn is to teach. So I want to learn from you and take your knowledge and teach it to my clients, because being financially responsible and having a strong financial blueprint in our head is really important. Whether you have positive ideas towards money or negative ideas towards money, we need money to live. So it's important for us to make sure we're using it the right way. So I have so many questions for you, Mandy. But I think my first question is, what is the most common habit that people have that's bad for their financial health?
Yeah, so I would say it's kind of a combination of two. One is avoidance, just feeling uncomfortable, so not really diving in and just kind of almost like letting your money control you, and feeling like if you avoid it, it will be less anxiety. But it's just the elephant in the room. Like, you still feel that anxiety. So that's one of the biggest things, is you're not looking close enough at it. The second thing is thinking that, let's say, for example, having your bills like set up on automatic, going through paying your bills, that's really managing your money. That's not managing your money. That's just covering the basics. That's making sure the bills are being paid. That is very, very different than intentionally managing your money, which is what I teach my clients, is intentional cash flow management. So if you're paying the bills, know that that's important, that needs to happen, but that isn't planning what's happening coming up. And I think a lot of times people think that, well, I'm checking these boxes because I'm getting our bills paid. That's totally not the same. So just understanding the difference, you have to take it another layer deeper to really get ahead. Like, it's not just paying it, but it's planning what's coming up in the pipeline. Because a lot of times we're just focused on right now, what's happening this month, your fixed expenses. We need to be focused on what's coming up in the pipeline 3 months and 6 months from now. Because a lot of times we actually need to be saving this month for a bigger one-off expense that's coming up, like for travel. Of course, not a lot of people are traveling right now, but even though the times that we're speaking in, I'm still saving for travel. The vast majority of my clients are still saving, because as soon as the world opens up more, people are going to want to go places. So we need to be prepared for that. We don't know when that's going to happen. So we still want to save monthly for travel when that happens. And for, for example, vehicle repairs, those will be coming up. Potentially, we want you to have a buffer for that. So it's really, we need to look at the bigger picture and what's coming up in the pipeline versus just what's happening right now and putting out like the little fires of kind of today. We need to start focusing on what's coming up in the months to come.
I love that you brought that up about like saving for future expenses, not just your fixed monthly expenses. I actually am uploading a YouTube video today about how to be more financially responsible. And the 3 checkboxes that I recommend everyone should be doing is making sure you make more money than you spend every single month, having 4 to 6 months of your bills put away in a savings account, and then investing as close to 20% of your income pre-tax and putting that into an IRA or a 401k or investing it in some type of retirement account. Is there anything else that you would expand on or dive deeper into that I didn't hit on those like basics of foundational wealth to create a bright future for yourself?
Yeah, so what I want to dive deeper on, and I love the points that you made, those were amazing. What I want to dive deeper on is talking about savings. So understanding that there's really 2 different types of savings. There's short-term savings and there's long-term savings. Long-term savings, those are more for, saving for a home, something that's, a really big purchase that's going to take quite a while to get there. And then for retirement, for investments, those types of things. So those are long-term. Short-term savings, those are things that are basically happening within a year. So it's really important to understand that difference, because you need to see them and treat them differently. So a lot of people just have one savings account and they constantly feel like they're dipping in and out of it. They put money in and then they just take it out. What I have my clients do and what I do personally is we have quite a few different savings accounts, and each savings account has an actual purpose. And so, for example, like Christmas, so all my clients have a gifts fund, have a clothing fund, have a travel fund. Every one of those savings accounts are separate from one another, because then they can also see how close are they to that goal, instead of feeling like they've got one savings account that they're trying to save for long-term and short-term savings. They're dipping in and out. It feels really crappy. When something feels really disempowering, you're not going to keep going with that habit. So when you have these separate savings accounts, so for example, the gifts account, that is an account, and a lot of these, they're not just going to grow infinitely. That's actually not the purpose of these short-term savings. They're probably only going to get to a certain amount, and then they're going to come down. Typically after Christmas, a lot of my clients' gifts funds are low. So them understanding how these operate differently makes it so they literally spend their money more wisely. They actually make these transfers into their savings buckets, but then they also understand they need to additionally have separate money going towards retirement and separate money that if they do want to buy a house or buy a vehicle with cash. So you can see your money really optimized. So that's what I highly recommend, is to sit down and figure out what are those expenses you do not have on a monthly basis, and how much basically would that cost for the year for each of those different categories. Open up separate savings accounts and then transfer on a monthly basis. Because one of the big things that I see is a lot of clients typically don't know actually how much they spend on a monthly basis, because all they're looking at is their fixed expenses, and then they put a little bit for groceries, a little bit for eating out. That number that they're typically seeing is very, very skewed, because they're not taking into account gifts that are coming up and travel and all of these other things. So I help them to see, putting all these numbers together, then they have a true understanding of what their expenses actually are. And then each month they transfer into these buckets. And what it starts to do is it evens out fluctuations from month to month of expenses being really high and it being really, really stressful of like, okay, my expenses technically would have been higher this month than income, but now they're not because they've been saving for it for 6 months. So it's really, really neat. So that's what I would add.
Yeah, I like that. Having different piggy banks for a gifts fund, a travel fund, a short-term savings fund, long-term savings fund. I think that's great advice. And I do want to say, disclaimer, everything that we're talking about right now is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Mandy, are you a financial advisor?
No, I am not.
She is not a financial advisor. So this is not financial advice. This is just a recommendation and our opinion on and what we do with our own money, because I'm not going to give anyone advice that I'm not doing. Like, I make more money than I spend. I have more than 6 months of bills in the bank, and I put way over 20% of my income in a brokerage account and in my IRA every single year. So this is not financial advice. Let me ask you a question, Mandy. Do you are you focused on any investment opportunities?
Yes, so that's a big thing for me, is making sure that I am investing every single month. So I have different areas that I invest in. I have low cost index funds that I have a lot of stuff in. Then I also have different ETFs. So for me, investing is huge. I do have a 6-figure plus portfolio, something I've been working at for quite a while. So that's really big for me. And it's also something that I'm consistently learning more about. So my investing strategy is also changing as I start to learn more, make some additional riskier investments, but at the same time, I have an entire portfolio that's completely diversified before diving into anything that's a little bit riskier. Because I know that there's so much talk about crypto and different things right now. And in my personal opinion, that's where you should really have such a strong financial foundation before doing something really risky. There's so many other things to do first from an investment standpoint before kind of dabbling in things that, because this person's doing it, and just in the space that we're in a lot of times the things that I'm hearing from clients, I'm like, okay, let's make sure to pay down, high interest debt, credit card debt first. Let's get you to have an emergency fund first. But yes, I definitely have investment opportunities that I'm working on.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned crypto, because I recently started in putting some money into Bitcoin and Ethereum and some other cryptocurrencies. And investments, it's hard, because sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes you get burned. Do you invest in real estate at all?
It's funny you should ask. So it's something I'm just getting into. It's something I've wanted to do for the past 7 years, and something that I am just starting to do, but more so on the short-term Airbnb side is what my focus for right now is going to be.
Interesting. Very cool. Very cool. So so we talked about the basics, which is, having a gifts fund, travel fund, long-term fund, short-term fund, knowing how much money you spend every month, understanding that your fixed monthly expenses aren't always exactly what they seem to be because of unexpected, like nails in your tires, or unexpected medical expense, or maybe some other things that pop up. And then we talked a little bit about investment strategies, right? Like, you like very safe investments, index funds, ETFs, things like that. I'm sure you have an IRA account or a 401k through your work that you're investing in. But if someone has all of these, buckets taken care of, right? And they're doing everything that you are recommending, what's something that they can do to take it a step further?
I would say from there, really focusing on diversifying your income sources. So that is something, if you've already got such a strong financial foundation, I would look at, okay, what other opportunities are out there? Some more passive, maybe there's going to be some more active, but basically you probably have one really strong main income source. From there, I would go to, so for example, I never count anything I make from my investments as income. I know some people count that as an income stream, but I'm not tapping into any of that right now because I want all of that to keep building. So that to me does not actually count as income, even though my portfolio is growing. So that's where I would say, figure out what are some of the other income sources. Some of them might be totally different things, But look at how you can start to really diversify your income sources even more. That's totally what I would make as a big focus after that.
Yeah, be as diverse as possible. You know, the future is very uncertain, especially in times like this. You know, the market is at all-time highs, and eventually it's selling off pretty hard today, but eventually, you know, we're probably going to see another bubble pop, whether it's real estate or Wall Street or crypto. So being diverse is very, very important. Very important. And you know, it's funny. I talk a little bit about not my financial situation, but I try to be as transparent as possible about what I do with my money. And being diverse is something that I'm trying to be really good at. But at the end of the day, there's only so many places you can put your money, whether it's real estate, the stock market, your own business, insurance. You know, there's a lot of different ways to build and grow your wealth. And I think the most important thing that I've learned when it comes to growing your net worth every single day, every single month, is living below your means, right? Like we can talk all day about ETFs and we can talk all day about other ways to save money, but I think the most important thing is living below your means, right?
Yes. Oh, I couldn't agree more with that. And that's where I talk about like, so your two biggest expenses are basically housing and transportation. So that's really where I tell my clients, okay, so if you have so much money going towards that every month, we have a way smaller amount to play with. Like the gap between your income and expenses, it's going to be really tight. So that's where, you know what, sometimes honestly taking a big step back and evaluating what your situation is and if that's how you want to keep living your life, because the closer, like the higher that those numbers are, honestly, the more stressful, because those are very fixed numbers. So vehicles is a big thing that I talk to clients about all the time. So I'll have clients that will have, you know, $50,000 car that they're paying on. And a lot of times, not a lot of times, but depending on how much that they're willing to change their situation, I will have clients that sell their vehicles, get out of them early, and either get into something that's a used vehicle for a much lower payment for a way less time frame. Or I even have clients where I help them to save up so they can go and just buy a vehicle in cash. Well, now all of a sudden that can free up anywhere from $250 to $700 a month. That is huge. Like I just on my Instagram, I've been doing the past couple of days, really showing the true costs and comparing different vehicles and different options. And some of them range anywhere from like $800,000 over a lifetime if you keep buying the same type of vehicle that, you know, is a high monthly payment versus something that's a lot lower. That can be literally just the vehicles that you drive can be the difference of $800,000 in your retirement. Easily.
Right.
So that's a big thing when you're talking about living below your means, really checking in on those big things. So if you're a homeowner, can you rent out a room? Can you do some Airbnb? Or if you're renting, is there somewhere else that you can rent for cheaper that you still like? Like really just asking yourself like about how much you're paying for those biggest expenses. That is really what will move the ball forward. And then the next one from there is your groceries. Really dialing in your groceries, but being consistent with it on a monthly basis. I've seen where I have clients, they're saving $500 a month on groceries alone. So really those top three expenses, if you can get those dialed in, it's so much easier to truly live within your means.
You hit the nail on the head. And I'm actually one of those people who is very, very intentional about how much money I spend on food. During the week, I am not allowed to eat out. I eat a lot of rice. I eat a lot of eggs. I eat a lot of oatmeal. I eat a lot of salad, chickpeas. I mean, this stuff, not only is it extremely inexpensive, but it's very healthy. And like for me, I'm very, very good with my money in the sense that like I print out my credit card statement every single month and I have a spreadsheet of all my fixed monthly expenses to the penny, what account they come out of, what day they come out of. So I'm very on top of it when it comes to that. And my biggest monthly variable expense is food by far. I could spend $1,000 on food or I could spend $170 on food. And that difference right there, like that surplus of how much money I'm saving every month invested into an ETF or a mutual fund getting, let's say, even 5 to 6% compounded yearly over 30 years is literally, like you said, $800,000. It could be $1 million. So creating these habits early and obviously being, you know, intentional about where your money's going, but focusing on those variable expenses and lowering your two biggest expenses, which is housing and your car. I splurged a lot on my car just because I like having a nice car and it brings me happiness, and a car that drives itself is saving me a lot of time. I don't spend money on gas and things like that. But at the end of the day, making sure that you're doing all these things. And if anyone listening to this podcast wants any advice, financial advice for Mandyy, go ahead and follow her on Instagram, message her at Intentionally Wealthy Co. Is that correct, Mandyy? I had your Instagram pulled up, but my iPad just died, so I don't have it in front of me. But how else can everyone get in touch with you?
Yeah, so Instagram is my main platform that I love, and I'm on there all the time, as well as the podcast, which is Intentionally Wealthy, and I share a ton of information on there, and the episodes are really short and sweet and to the point, so I would love to have you on both.
That's amazing. And I followed you back. I would love to come on your podcast and talk about money. It was really a pleasure to have you on today. Are there any last words you can leave the audience with today?
Yeah, so really, really dialing in, sit down, go through your money. Do not avoid it. It causes so much more anxiety avoiding it. Sit down and figure out what those expenses that really vary, and open up those savings accounts that make such a huge difference. So then you can start to see what that looks like on a monthly basis of what your kind of plus or minuses at the end of the month. Once you factor in all of those savings accounts, makes a huge difference. And that will give you a true understanding of what your financial situation actually truly looks like.
You heard it here first, folks. Mandyy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule today. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.